Gotta love those last-minute switches. This episode was not supposed to be this game. We were expecting Ghost in the Shell First Assault to be available by now, but apparently there was some pushback that no one bothered to mention. So in a scramble for a similar title on Steam that wasn't getting completely destroyed by user ratings, we somehow ended up here, a free-to-play shooter by Crytek. Some version of CryEngine's been popping up in a lot of MMOs lately, so we might as well take a look at something by the original developer. This is the MMO Grinder, and it's time to look at Warface. Developed by Crytek and published by nearly everyone. Seriously, depending entirely on where you're playing from, this game could be under the publication of Nexon, Mail.ru, aka My.com, and apparently even Tryon. Though the version we're currently playing on is on Steam and published by Crytek's own G-Face publication. Some of you might remember this being on Xbox 360, which it was, but those servers were pulled last year, so it seems that PC is the only option if you want to play this game. Well, there isn't going to be too much to talk about here, oddly enough. Not because the game is simplistic in its visuals by any means, but given the developer's pedigree, this was all expected. For those not in the know, Crytek's games are considered benchmarking pinnacles. If you wanted to see just how good your PC and graphics card was, you'd see how high a settings you can get away with in Crysis. While this game does look very good, it's obviously not as great as some of Crytek's other titles, which isn't that surprising in either regard. The game runs well for the level of graphics that it does have, and there's nice variety in the color palette, effects look really good, and there's fantastic levels of detail in the various models. Everything in the visual department is very competently done. There are enough differences between the classes visually to distinguish them, even without the UI markers, and enemies stand out well enough in the various maps to ensure that you won't be gunned down by something you just couldn't see very often. Even the weapons themselves look very good, and bringing the signature weapon mod system from Crysis into Warface was a good idea, allowing players to swap parts on the fly to customize the weapon to the situation, and giving very nice visual upgrades to the models as you do so. The music for Warface feels unremarkable to the point that you could easily be forgiven for thinking that there wasn't any music. When listening to it on its own, you'll be left with a feeling that it's just kind of that generic modern military soundtrack. Lots of simplistic tones punctuated with sharp orchestral stings or slow melodic string sections underneath electronica. It's the sort of soundtrack you'll hear 1,000 times over if you type in epic music on YouTube, but contrary to that, it just feels generic, safe, and oftentimes inaudible over the rest of the sound design. A large factor is the excellent sound design on the various weapons, which makes them all, even pistols, feel really weighty and impactful. When a game gets the visual and auditory feedback right on its weaponry, it feels more satisfying to play, and Warface certainly nailed both, ensuring that each weapon feels just right when you use it. The voice work, on the other hand, isn't anything special, nor is it terrible either. It's just serviceable. It gets the point across with some good line readings and some bad line readings, but it just kind of works. While the voice work may be alright, the dialogue is absolutely atrocious, though we'll have words on that in due time. When starting out the game, you're presented with the difficult choice of what kind of gruff male face you want. After, you'll be taken to a tutorial to learn the ins and outs of the first two classes. With most shooters, you could simply say, skip the tutorial, but there are a couple things that aren't present in your average FPS, and it's good to learn the mechanics of each class. The main two mechanics that aren't present in many other games are the slide maneuver, which is sometimes required to get bonus objectives, and the team elevation, which allows two players to reach higher ground by boosting each other up a wall. As you progress in level, granted by earning enough experience from playing missions or PvP, you can gain access to the final two classes and take part in their own personal tutorial missions to help fully understand how each class works. Said classes are as follows. Assault, the standard rifleman class that can wield light machine guns and can resupply ammo to themselves and teammates. The medic, being exactly what you would expect, healing themselves and allies, can also wield devastating shotguns for the best close-range class. Engineer, who uses submachine guns, can interact with all objectives faster than any other class, and can repair body armor of themselves and their allies. Snipers deal long-range precision damage with some of the most powerful weapons in the game, however they have no special class mechanics. They're used primarily to take out high-threat targets and enemy snipers. It's always good to have a balance of classes, though the two most important are Assault and Medic for obvious reasons. which does make the other two classes feel less important, save for some nice utility on higher difficulty levels. On those high-level difficulty missions, having an engineer to repair your armor to give you additional time to seek cover, or having a sniper take out the insanely powerful enemy snipers, spec ops, and demo men can be a godsend. Speaking of enemies, there's actually an interesting variety of types you'll come across in the field, assuming you're playing the PvE modes. Your generic enemy riflemen are the usual cannon fodder. Close quarters combat soldiers will act as melee assault and are usually backed up by shotgunners. The far more deadly specialist enemies also tend to be the long-range combatants, with one exception in the form of a shield-wielding enemy that can knock you over and proceed to beat 17 kinds of stupid out of you, with snipers, who on higher difficulty levels can nearly one-shot you and need to be taken out quickly. Spec Ops will use a blinding laser light to block your vision and lay down accurate and very damaging firepower on the targeted player, and demo men whose RPGs can take out entire teams in one fell swoop. Then there are the mini-bosses and boss fights taking the form of thickly armored heavy gunners who are only vulnerable at the power cell on their back, and massive combat mechs that need to be weakened before they can fall over and expose the core on their top for a few moments. Honestly, with everything the game offers, this is one of the more robust shooters content-wise. Not only do you have your standard PvP with several types of gameplay to play on, but PvE missions that have different difficulties and rotate out each day. You'll also have Special Operations mode, which will have 2 maps with a more Left 4 Dead style feel to them, and task you with escorting an armored truck that uses an EMP generator to destroy the cybernetically enhanced zombies. Relating to that last thing, the game's story is just so pants-on-head crazy it doesn't seem to make sense that it all fits in the same universe. The story can be incredibly pretentious, and yet the enemy is portrayed as so cartoonishly evil and everything is so over the top that it just becomes comical. The PMC group that you're battling against has so many resources that they're openly invading countries on their own, using giant battle mechs and reanimated corpses that they've filled with cybernetic augments and nanomachines, while actively harvesting civilians and depleting resources like locusts. Gameplay-wise, there are some drawbacks to the title, in that it can be a buggy mess. Quite a few times Dresker actually spawned outside of the starter helicopter, which means that you're completely SOL and can only disconnect from the match. You'll need to repair any equipment that you've permanently unlocked after using it, and while we've heard some people complain that you don't make enough to keep up, no one in Grindstone experienced that even on a loss, so we're not sure if they're just misremembering or if something was changed. There's also the matter of the unfortunate need to have the launcher up at all times so the game can even run. This isn't a major complaint, but it's a bit of resources being used for something unnecessary that most other titles wouldn't do, and it sure as hell isn't working as some form of hack guard, but that would be spoiling the next section. One of the most noticeable things about the community is the volume of bans being handed out by the game's fair fight system. While sounding like a decent thing to be happening, this is actually most indicative of the game's biggest problem, that there are tons of hackers all over the place, and we don't mean subtle hacks either. Dresker had a match at insane difficulty, where the lowest ranked player in the match was walking out into the open with a light machine gun and headshotting everything, while their characters spun around and snapping in different directions. Said person repeatedly cried out in chat, "No report blocks, no rep, I help, no report," and had a buddy that kept trying to claim that they were totally playing legit. This is also where it was discovered on the insane difficulty level that friendly fire is turned on, and said buddy was then team-killing everyone in the helicopter when the next round started before he just disconnected. This is easily one of those games where you'll want to bring your own group into it, as the groups that tend to play it can end up rather douchey. You can find yourself vote-kicked for no reason. You can be harassed for doing nothing more than helping to revive one player before another. You can get a massive dissertation about why you suck and how they did all the work, even though they were dead half the match, and so on. The good news is that the game makes it incredibly simple to play with your friends, and has a rather interesting and unique system to accomplish this. Whenever you want to join a match or start up a room, a box will pop up with the names of all your friends that are currently online, allowing you to invite them with a single click of a button. While it seems a bit odd to focus on this point, we'd actually like to see this mechanic carried over into other titles, as it allows for groups to form quickly without needing to scroll through a list. You can find the standard guild system here as well, which honestly had an amusing, if pointless, addition by showcasing how advanced your guild was with a picture of your current base. There were a few chuckles when Grindstone started up and our entire operation could fit inside of one deluxe camping tent, a 4x4, and a picnic table, but we were quickly advanced to a larger tent with a jeep and a satellite dish. I'm holding out for a camper, personally. We're going places, is all I'm saying. This will give many veteran gamers flashbacks, but we have another case of Microsoft Point Syndrome reigning supreme here, though it is far worse than that old Microsoft Point Syndrome. The prices themselves are rather high for what you get, with the lowest value of 320 points for $5 barely able to get you anything, and higher values are needed for some of the better benefits. The fortunate news is that there isn't any kind of gear or weaponry that you can outright buy with cash currency, though you can exchange it for in-game currency, which can be a bit iffy. Though, if you're dead set against paying for anything in this, you'll find it a decent option compared to other titles. The one exception is the VIP system, which is broken into VIP and Mega VIP, with both giving boosts to unlock experience, level experience, and cash, while the Mega version will just give a much larger boost. Oddly enough, you can combine both to make even more potent boosters, as VIPs can be stacked together up to a maximum bonus of 300% increases. Most monetary credit unlocks come in the form of cosmetics, allowing you to obtain different tags for your nameplate, or permanently unlocking different cosmetic skins for your characters, like modern military outfits, a sniper's ghillie suit, or playing as an uncustomizable female character. Yeah, that's a cash shop unlock in this game. So it's not so much pay to win as it is pay to girl. The game is also pretty keen on granting you free unlocks, but these can often be one-day temporary unlocks, meaning if you want a full benefit of that weapon or its goofy skinned variant, you'd best be playing for the next 24 hours or you won't have it to use any longer. There are rentals within the cash shop as well, but the sheer amount of permanent unlocks outranks the concern. Just be wary. For what was essentially a filler game for us, this wasn't the worst detour to be taking, though I think I might have had a bit more interest in our other planned title, and certainly more interest in the title that we have planned next. But I don't think this game was capable of making me as angry as people thought it would. It's solid, but I don't really feel strongly toward any aspect of it. Here's my final rating. As squad-based and class-based arena shooters go, this is a solid effort. Gunplay feels and sounds fine, and the game has plenty of physics-based fun that can make simple things feel even more impactful, without ever taking itself too seriously, for the most part. Despite the small range of classes, each one feels different and important enough to survive your fights, at least in the regular PvE modes, and all of a general and desired use among your team, letting you treat assault classes as pointmen and ammo mules, or medics as basic healers or close-quarter room-clearing specialists. There's plenty of areas and modes to play, with multiple difficulties to test your skill throughout, whether you prefer the set-piece to set-piece and bosses gameplay of missions, to the horde mode special ops missions, or your preferred method of PvP gameplay. Unlike what most people would assume, and what was available in ZMR, getting weapons in this game is only obtained by using the in-game earned cash, and that's a welcome addition. Plenty of those weapons are permanent too, which is always a nice touch. Arguments can be made that you can purchase the credits with in-game cash, but you can earn just about as much for a match, so it's just a matter of patience, really. Of course, if you want to speed up XP and credit gain, there's the military shooter classic of VIP time, including its more expensive yet more lucrative cousin, Mega VIP time. Though I'll freely admit the points are definitely on the pricier side, and I wouldn't advise getting them unless you're really into this game. If you're not into shooters, you may not want to play this, simple as that. It's about as basic as you can get for a shooter in both tone, enemy types, and combat, even if the team mechanics and monstrous mech bosses add a bit more to the game. It's disheartening to see that someone was banned nearly every time you play a match, but not because they were banned, but because there are just so many people to have to ban that you see it so often. Hackers kinda have the run of the game, and while they can make an insane mode co-op run an effortless yet unsatisfying breeze to play, it'll make you think twice about entering PvP, and wondering if the guy who killed you really is just that good, or if it's their aimbot. Again, nothing about the game is all that special. The story is Captain Planet levels of goofy, and the gameplay can be found in dozens of other titles. It's a toss-up as to whether or not this will really be worth your time. Next time, we'll finally be taking a full look at the English version of a game that's been in publisher limbo since 2012. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around again. Left window will take you to Armored Warfare, making you think I'm some kind of military nut or something. I mean, yeah, I was in the Marines, but I didn't even know what Warface meant until after boot camp. Like, I didn't see Full Metal Jacket, and every time they told me, show me your Warface, I just gave them this really weird look, and then they kind of walked off confused. Yeah, no wonder everyone was so afraid of me then. Right window will bring you to Blade and Soul side quest. Hey, did you guess the new title yet? Yeah, well, if you want to see our first impressions on that game before it goes into full launch and probably unplayable servers, you can check that out right now by clicking on the window on the right. And of course we got the standards, your Twitters, your Facebooks, your subscribe buttons. I figured y'all know how that shit works by now. But otherwise, if you want to check out our new plug from our old plug provider, Slipstream's back with his own podcast show, which you can find over at twitch.tv/no-tokens-required. He airs it every Sunday night at 9:30 Eastern, so if you want to tune in and check that out, you can go ahead and click right there. I'll have the link in the description. Speaking of links, he's also got his own website at the simply titled notokensrequired.com, which you can also check out at your leisure.